Breaking news. A day after presiding over Easter Mass at the Vatican, Pope Francis has died. Catholics around the world in mourning and wondering who will succeed him.
And Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth under scrutiny again for more text messages with sensitive military information.
And local pantries are facing steep budget cuts. How they're changing the way they do business.
These stories and more coming up on CJS News. Good afternoon. Welcome to CJS News. I'm Ali Jaswal.
And I'm Mason Leith. As we come on the air today, the Dow closed more than 1,000 points down. The dollar fell to a new 3-year low, and the Trump administration is exploring whether they can remove Fed Chair Jerome Powell, as President Trump has previously criticized him for not lowering the interest rates.
And now, turning to our other top story, Pope Francis has died at the age of 88. Let's go to CJS reporter Ileana Exaras live at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Ileana?
Ali, the Associated Press has just reported that Pope Francis died of a stroke and heart failure. The Pope had been in poor health for the past few months. Here at St. Patrick's Cathedral, mourners are paying their respects. Pope Francis was elected in 2013 after the resignation of Pope Benedict XVI and was the first Latin American to assume the role. He was known for his signature charm and humble style, but also drew criticism from conservatives for allowing blessings for same-sex couples, though he did reaffirm the long-standing Catholic doctrine that marriage is between a man and a woman. During his papacy, he also oversaw the Vatican's response towards cases of child abuse by clergy members and led the church through the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic. The news of Francis's death comes after a long hospitalization back in February for double pneumonia. The native Argentinian battled chronic lung disease for most of his life. During the mourning period, Pope Francis's body will lie in state in the Vatican at St. Peter's Basilica. The funeral will take place within a week, and the conclave will take place afterwards to elect a new pope. Live from Midtown, Ileana Exaras, CJS News.
Thank you, Ileana. Well, it was a very sad news.
And other top stories in today's news. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is clinging to his job after a weekend of bad headlines.
The Defense Secretary had already come under fire for his involvement in a private Signal group chat that discussed military plans.
Now, Hegseth is linked to yet another Signal chat where he shared military information. Trump said today he and Hegseth are on the same page, but there are rumors that Trump may be looking for a replacement.
Over the weekend, Russian President Vladimir Putin declared a brief Easter ceasefire on the Russian front.
The ceasefire isn't happening, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. In a post on X, he claimed that Russian strikes persist, regardless of the Russian leader's promise of silence. It comes as the West ramps up pressure to bring the 3-year-long war to an end. Trump has repeatedly asked for a deal with Ukraine, where the US gets access to the country's minerals in exchange for peace.
Well, we have a minerals deal, which I guess is going to be signed on Thursday, Scott, next Thursday, soon. And I assume they're going to live up to the deal, so we'll see.
Though Secretary of State Marco Rubio has signaled that if there's no deal, the US will move on and away.
So if they're serious about peace, either side or both, we want to help. If it's not going to happen, then we're just going to move on.
Meanwhile, in response to Russia's day-long Easter ceasefire, the US State Department said on Sunday that it would welcome the extension beyond Sunday, while the Kremlin said earlier that there was no order for an extension. For CJS News, I'm Ali Jaswal.
The State Department said it would welcome extending the ceasefire. The Kremlin said yesterday there will be no extension. Last week, Senator Chris Wallin met with Maryland man who was deported to El Salvador by the Trump administration.
The meeting comes amidst a media storm after Garcia, an alleged member of the criminal gang MS-13, was deported by the Trump administration despite a lack of evidence and due process, and despite a Supreme Court ruling ordering the administration to facilitate his return.
This case is not just about one man. It's about protecting the constitutional rights of everybody who resides in the United States of America.
But after the meeting, the first sighting of Garcia since his deportation, the Trump White House fired back, posting a doctored photos of Garcia's tattoos and a headline which said, "Senator meets with deported MS-13 illegal alien in El Salvador, who's never coming back." Van Hollen's journey did make some changes. Garcia has been moved to another prison, but for now he remains in El Salvador and is just one of hundreds of mounting cases of ICE arrests and deportations across the country.
On Saturday, the Supreme Court blocked the Trump administration from deporting over 200 Venezuelans.
A major rally to defend higher education. This protest was part of a nationwide day of action in response to recent federal funding threats to universities. CJS reporter Augustina Malus joins us live with more from Foley Square. Augustina?
The rally for the right to learn took place here in Foley Square last Thursday. New Yorkers took to the streets to rally against the federal government's funding cuts to universities.
Hands off our students! Hands off our campus! Hands off our cities!
Last Thursday, students, faculty, and workers in New York City joined a nationwide day of action for higher education. 150 campuses across the country sent a message to the White House.
Right to free speech should be protected here, especially for our students who are trying to better the community and fight for what's right.
New York public advocate Jumani Williams, Mahmoud Khalil's attorney Ramzi Qassem, faculty union leaders, students, and activists took the mic to call out President Trump and resist federal pressure. The president of the City University of New York's Faculty Staff Union said the political overreach is harming universities.
When dissident voices on our campuses are suppressed, when protesters are abducted off our very streets into deportation proceedings without due process, that creates fear, that creates a chilling effect. It is designed to instill fear, and that deprives our students of their right to learn.
Recently, the Trump administration told Harvard it's reviewing $9 billion in federal contracts and grants if the school doesn't do more to address anti-Semitism. It's threatening to restrict foreign students hostile to American values and allow federal oversight of things like admissions and hiring. At Columbia, a consent decree is under discussion, and nearly 1,500 students or recent graduates across the U.S. have had their visas revoked.
It's terrifying that it seems like a student has been abducted for writing an essay that would receive a good grade in my class.
Schools all over the nation have been protesting today in support of higher education. In New York City, faculty unions, students, educators have come together and taken part in action throughout most of the day. The action started in Washington Square Park this afternoon with a flash mob. From there, everyone marched down to Foley Square Park, where we are right now. And as you can see behind me, everyone's gathered for a rally. And essentially what they're doing is standing up for academic freedom and the protection of international students and faculty.
Augustina, protesters said this is just the beginning of their advocacy. What's next?
I am hearing that there is a march scheduled for this Friday uptown. Students are going to gather at City College of New York and will then march down to Columbia. We're keeping tabs on the latest. Back to you.
Thank you, Augustina. And renovating New York's Penn Station has been discussed for years, with little progress and a lot of frustration. Now, the Trump administration is taking control of the $7 billion project from the MTA. They promised to speed things up and cut through any red tape.
It's the busiest transportation hub in the Western Hemisphere, serving more than 600,000 people a day. And for decades, Penn Station has experienced bureaucratic gridlock to resolve its crumbling infrastructure.
The owner is taking back the steering wheel and saying, I'm going to drive the car now. And it's appropriate for Amtrak to play that role. They own the station. They should be the one making these decisions. The federal government will be paying for a lot of this and providing financing and has the ability to do that.
Governor Hochul says the federal government's takeover of the project will save New York over $1 billion.
We can finally, with real leadership, start making the best station.
But critics warn the takeover could reduce community input and put private development interest ahead of transit riders.
I hope it's good news. Anytime there's change and disruption, it can be really scary.
This new plan ties in with broader federal infrastructure goals. Funding sources have yet to be announced.
The city's emergency food network is facing tough times after cuts from the federal government. CJS reporter Fiona Sullivan is live from a food pantry in Harlem. Fiona?
Thanks, Ali. Food banks across the city are preparing for the worst as these cuts disrupt deliveries and support for those who need it most. Volunteers and leaders are taking it one day at a time and are determined to keep feeding their communities. New York Common Pantry serves hundreds of families each week at their East Harlem location, but federal funding cuts left a $2 million hole in their budget.
It was a huge loss to us, and we immediately regrouped and tried to plan for how we could make up for that kind of devastating loss.
Judy Seekin, the pantry's deputy director, says the cuts here are made worse by DOGE cuts to other programs like SNAP. Those cuts, plus inflation, have made the customers face tough times. The pantry did apply for a funding extension but hasn't been approved yet. Seekin says they are planning on doing more food rescue and may have to cut down on supplies, but will never turn people away.
We are committed to continue to provide food for all the people we serve. That's really important to us, so we're really working extremely hard to figure out how to make up for that funding and how also that we can cut services that have the least impact on the people we serve.
Senator Kirsten Gillibrand recently spoke at a press conference and criticized the cuts, saying they could result in millions of dollars in lost food provisions that help feed families and help farmers sell their food. Over at Trinity's Services and Food for the Homeless in the East Village, Executive Director Alex Lawrence says the cuts have made it harder to stock the food that people need.
These are like staple items, things like rice, things like beans, things that we can get other places, but we have to pay more for them.
Volunteers like middle schooler Nariah Smith just hopes that New Yorkers who need a place to eat will always have it.
I like to help out so everybody can have food and not go hungry and make sure everybody's okay and not hurt and everything. Make sure everybody's safe.
Recently, FEMA canceled aid to a Brooklyn shelter and food bank that serves migrants because they are supporting, quote, illegal aliens. Live from New York Common Pantry in Harlem, Fiona Sullivan, CJS News.
Thank you, Fiona.
And in 1 year since New York's good cause eviction law took effect, this state law is aimed at protecting tenants from being evicted for no reason. So, is it working? CJS reporter Brianna Dennehy joins us live with more. Brianna?
Thanks, Mason. I'm here outside of the housing court in the Bronx. This is the borough with the highest eviction rate in New York. Experts say that the good cause eviction law has helped tenants, but more work needs to be done.
Under the good cause law, renters have the right to fight unfair rent increases and evictions in housing court.
There are interesting things that are happening in New York City that don't happen anywhere else. The main thing is that although there are many evictions happening in New York just because of its huge size, in terms of the proportion of people impacted, the numbers have been dropping.
Experts say good cause was a step in the right direction, but more needs to be done.
In 2020, New York was really good at creating moratoria, creating rental assistance, and that in that moment evictions dropped to historically low levels.
Some tenants say that the pressure hasn't let up.
And our rent has gone up 11% this year, or a little bit. We had to negotiate for it to go down to 8%-ish. So yeah, it's been tough.
A report from Zumper shows that New York City is the nation's most expensive rental market, and last month the average price of a one-bedroom rose about 3% to nearly $4,500 a month, $30 shy of its all-time high last year.
I'm also looking for a job right now, so it's a little bit of a tougher time, and I feel like a lot of everyone's looking out for themselves.
Right now, New York City has an eviction filing rate of 5%. That's eviction filed per every 100 renter households. And And that's much lower than the averages that we see in other cities.
In related news, the AP reported this morning that 60,000 Americans, including those fleeing homelessness or domestic abuse, could risk losing rental assistance by the end of next year due to funding cuts. Live from the Bronx, I'm Brianna Dennehy, CJS News.
Thank you, Brianna. Ali?
It's now time for On the Vertical, where we bring social media stories to the newscast. Up first, the MTA says congestion pricing is reducing traffic on city streets. But the story gets plenty of traffic online. Social media reporter Ileana Exarus has the latest.
Last week, a federal judge dismissed more arguments against congestion pricing. Afterwards, the MTA praised the decision, saying the plan will continue to produce faster commutes and safer streets. Meanwhile, the MTA and the federal government remained locked in a lawsuit over congestion pricing, and they'll be back in court this fall. Congestion pricing tolls began earlier this year with the goal of reducing city traffic and raising revenue to fix public transportation. Most passenger cars driving south of 60th Street in Manhattan pay $9 during peak times and $2.25 during off-peak times. There are exemptions, including travel through tunnels. About 100 days in, advocates say congestion pricing is going according to plan.
It's speeded up travel within the congestion zone. It's made the buses move more quickly. It's actually reduced crashes in the congestion zone by about 15%. It's making the air cleaner.
We've got to make public transit actually work for New Yorkers somehow, and congestion pricing is a really great way to raise revenue in order to finance a lot of those repairs.
Some drivers aren't too happy about it.
You know, I have to pay the congestion pricing, and this is every week. Every week. It's expensive. It's a money grab.
Governor Hochul says congestion pricing will continue.
While some drivers are avoiding the city's tolls, hundreds of car enthusiasts made their way into Manhattan for the auto show. Reporter CJ Haddad takes us behind the scenes of the event.
Buckle up, because we're going to the New York Auto Show. The auto show has been going on for 125 years and brings together dealers promoting their latest models, bands of the classics, and plenty of interested consumers. But this year, the auto industry's had extra pressure with tariff threats coming from the White House. As of now, there are up to 25% tariffs on imported vehicles, with an additional 25% on auto parts expected to take effect on May 3rd. Some automakers have had more serious reactions. Ford's reportedly halted shipments of U.S.-made vehicles to China, while Britain's Jaguar Land Rover is halting shipments to the U.S. as they develop new long-term plans for dealing with the new trade policies. Consumer Robert Fitzpatrick is thinking twice about getting an SUV.
They've done an effective job at discouraging anyone from buying anything, at least until they've decided what numbers are the real numbers and what numbers are the imaginary numbers that will change next week.
But other gearheads aren't as worried.
So, yes, we do know the tariffs are there, but Americans, we love our automobiles. That's not going to stop us.
Despite the tariff uncertainty, as you can see behind me, the vibes are still up. The crowd and audience is very happy, and you can still hear the sounds of burning rubber behind me and all around. In the Javits Center, beside an SUV, CJ Haddad for CJS News.
Thank you, CJ. And it is that time of year again. Sun, sound, and some serious style. Coachella 2025 just wrapped up in the Californian desert. The festival had some unforgettable performances, surprise guests, and more viral moments than you can count.
Thousands flocked to Indio, California for the past 2 weekends for the return of Coachella, the annual music festival that's part concert, part cultural phenomenon. Headliners brought the heat to the desert. Lady Gaga made her long-rumored return with a cinematic performance, while Charli XCX turned the main stage into a British rave. Off stage, the fashion was as loud as the music. Think metallics, mesh, and more vintage cowboy hats than you can count. And of course, plenty of celebs were spotted in the VIP section. But it wasn't all vibes and glitter. Some on social media called out the festival for long wait times, lax security, and poor transportation within the festival.
in case anybody's wondering how car camping is going at Coachella.
Still, for most fans, it was a weekend to remember.
Wow, Ali, I mean, to me, Coachella looks like an absolute blast. Are you down to go with me next year and party crazy?
No, Mason, not at all. It's so superficial. I need something real.
Something real?
Yeah.
All right, on that note, that is all the news for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Mason Leith.
And I'm Ali Jaswal. We'll see you next time on CJS News.